Name is Belinda Forrest, and I am married to my husband Courtney of almost 39 years. We have 3 adult children, 1 son and 2 daughters, and have 6 grandchildren. We are a retired military family, and we've been here in the South Carolina area just about 23 years now. We've traveled and gone on with the military, and this is not our original home. I'm originally from Detroit, born there, grew up there. My family also is in Columbus, Ohio. My husband's a New Yorker, but I went into the military very early on, and that's where I met my husband, and we married and began a life. I am the new owner and broker of Exit Empowerment Realty here in Columbia, South Carolina, real estate brokerage. I've been in that industry for over almost 11 years. This has just been, it's been a phenomenal experience for us, and this is a new venture that we are just really anxious and excited about helping the community here. We did have a big family, not my immediate family. I have one younger brother, and so my brother and I grew up with my mom and dad. We have a large extended family. My mother is the oldest of 10 siblings, and with all of those cousins, and I grew up with 23 first cousins, and we were very close. So family has been the center of everything. My parents were divorced when we were about 12, so it was primarily me and my brother and my mom growing up there in Detroit. I would say in general, we were a happy family. We were very close, especially with our extended family. Once my parents divorced, it was just my mother and my brother, and my mother she was a single working mom for all intents and purposes. And so in addition to working a full-time job, she also went to school full-time. So me and my brother were latchkey kids. We would come home after school, and a lot of times we were responsible for taking care of, ourselves. Me as the older sibling, watching out for my brother, it was challenging. It was challenging at times because with the absence of my father, I believe my brother took that the hardest. I still had mom, so I had some support. And growing up he's 4 years younger than me, so a 10 to 15-year-old boy, those are the years that a boy really needs his dad. And I think that had an impact on him personally, but it also had an impact on us. So with my mom working and in school, first, with that, we were really exposed to just a wide audience of people. She would often have study groups at the house, and we were very involved with our church. That's our background. Church, God, that's the foundation of everything we are. My great-grandmother was a preacher and a pastor. My grandmother was a pastor, and later in years, my mother became a pastor as well. So we were always, everything that we did with family, 99% of the time, it had to do with the church. And so we just had a large extended family when it came to our church family. And then as mom was in school, we were exposed to a lot of her friends. So, people have always just been the center of our life. Even when we spent summers with my grandmother in Ohio, I remember her doing Wednesday night prayer meetings in her living room. We were all sitting around and out on the front porch, and so that was the center of our community, and it was a blessing. I really enjoyed that. We really did, and even to this day, we have very close friends and connections as a result of the people that we were surrounded by, and they became our family. That was our family. Not really. He was, my dad was, he was a smooth guy. I'll describe it that way. And so he was always a lot of fun. People. He was very much a people person like myself. But when it came to us in the early years of their divorce, I guess he was trying to find his way, and mom was doing the best that she could. but he would come around, birthdays, holidays, that type of thing. There were times that we would spend the weekend at his apartment. And one funny thing I just recall is that when I guess probably I was about 14, 15, my dad was actually a hairdresser. So he would do my hair. I would go over there on a regular basis, and that was always fun as well. So, he was, we loved our dad. We didn't have a hostile environment. And I think the reasons that they divorced were, your typical marital issues. It had nothing to do with us. There was no abuse or anything, thank goodness. But, I just think that absence, particularly for my brother, was hard. And what that did for us, it caused us to kind of butt heads a lot. I love my brother very much. As far as painful, traumatic moments, I don't recall any of those. And, even the absence of my dad just caused me to kind of withdraw, kind of go into myself, and I don't want to deal with this because, I guess you could say I've always been the good kid, never ruffling any feathers or any of that. So as long as I kept quiet, kept to myself, did what I was told, then everything will be all right. How did I meet my husband? I met my husband when in the military. So after I graduated high school, I stayed home for about a year and I did community college. After that, I went on away to Eastern Michigan University and did about a year and a half or so there. While I was there, my grades declined and I felt like I was just wondering, I didn't know what I wanted to do, when I grew up at that age. And so I remember a recruiter coming on campus and me falling for the lines. And before you know it, I had enlisted. I do remember having to come home and tell my mom, "Hey mom, in 2 weeks I'm shipping out." Yeah, I heard it that time. Oh, she was not happy. She was not happy. But in hindsight, that was, I think, one of the best choices that I made. From that time, I went into the military, did my basic AIT, and then my first duty station was Fort Hood, Texas. And so that was, I enlisted in May. I was there by October. And when you're in the military, they do, all the new people on base, they come in and you're in called a reception station, and that's where they do all of the HR, the processing. Well, I actually met him that same day. It was Halloween of all day. And so that should have been a clue, maybe. No. But so we met, and so we were kind of following each other place to place. And he was kind of he was like a slick guy. He drove a fancy 2-seater car and all of that. And so, I thought he was kind of cute. So he was kind of talking during our in process, and we went out. Long story short, we wound up being in the same brigade area. And because after we went out, Fort Hood is huge, so you could be there and never see a person. But we were right there in the same area, started dating and going out, and next thing you know, we were a pair. So that's where we met. And within a year, we met on Halloween that year. By June of the following year, we were married and expecting our first baby. So it was a whirlwind adventure. I didn't. I really didn't, because when I initially met him, I thought he was very arrogant. He just was not my type. He was very handsome and said all the right things. But I didn't know, and I was like, he's just a jerk. He's just an arrogant son of a gun. And when we finally discovered we were in the same area, and the more I hung around him, he just really became a good friend. He really did. And so I started crushing on him then. That's a good question. I've often asked him the same thing. Because I honestly do not remember him officially proposing, and he was just saying, "Oh, I wanted to marry you." I'm like, but no, I didn't have the fancy get down on one knee. I didn't have that. The secret for me has been just the commitment, making that commitment before God first, and honoring my word. I think, growing up in life, I've always felt that my word was important. That was key. And when you gave a promise, you kept your promises. I'm a very loyal person. If I'm attached to you in any way, I'm there for you. And so because of where the commitment that we made to one another, to me, it just wasn't an option. Now, there were times I came real close to that, and it was not easy. But even when one of us were wrong, or things weren't the way they should have been, my faith is the thing that always just kind of grasps me. Because when wrong was done to me, I would always ask myself, if God cared enough about me in my sin to forgive me, who am I not to forgive somebody else? And so that's always been the constant for me, to remind myself of that commitment that I made. Surprise. It was only because we found out probably about 4 weeks before our wedding. Is when we found out. And so it was like, okay. But I was very excited. Because I've always had a nurturing spirit. So I love kids, and I was excited. It was, I think it's every person, mother's dream, to what's that first one going to look like. And so we were really excited, and it came at not at a difficult time, but shortly after my son was born. We were both still in the military. So now here we are, and my husband had just gotten orders for Korea. And my son at that time was like 8 months old. And so now we had the choice. I had the choice to go with him. But if I did that, I'd have to send my baby home, because at that time they wouldn't allow soldiers to take their children. I'd have to send him home to mom, and I wasn't willing to do that for a year. So I stayed back. So now here I am, the single mom, just like my mom was. And so that was my first experience as, just really being on my own and responsible for someone else. So it was me and my son. I'm a single soldier for all intents and purposes, and raising him. And it was not easy, but our military community was just phenomenal, because people came into my life, and my son's babysitter was in our apartment building 2 doors down, and so things just really worked out. So I was very grateful for that. It absolutely is. Parenting adult children is it's a challenge. And I believe, depending on how we approach it, it can be a good or bad thing. I think all of us, that are parents, at some point we envision our kids growing up, moving out, and that's it. Yeah. That's the dream. And coming back when we want them to, and all of that. But sometimes it just doesn't work out that way, and I think as they get older, our role in their life changes. In the beginning, they need us, but later, at some point we'll need them. And, so it's definitely been a challenge. And I really can't even say, depending on how they've come up, is how, you can predict things will turn out, because that's not always so. You don't know. That's hard, and I think it's different. I think that as a parent with a child in crisis, it's going to be different for each person. And the difference is going to be, first of all, on what was the relationship like before that. If you've always had a hostile relationship in the beginning and you resented your child, your child in crisis is going to look different than my child in crisis. But I feel like, what do you want for that child? I guess that's what the parent has to ultimately ask themselves. What do you want? Do you love your child, or is this a child that, you all have agreed to do your own thing? I don't know. I can't answer that for somebody else. In God. The way that I was able to find peace in dealing with that crisis with my child, my daughter in this case, my middle daughter, it really was through prayer. It was because at that point, I don't know what's going on in her mind or her thoughts or any of that, but He does. I don't know where she is, but He does. And so if you wrestle with those questions in your mind and on your own, it's enough to send anybody over the edge. It really is. And so, in my case, I didn't realize that my relationship with my daughter in this case wasn't as strong until we were at that place. And looking back on her life, not to tell her story, but looking back on her life, like I said, we were a military family, and there was a time where her dad was overseas and not present in her life during the years that were critical in growing up into a young woman. And so I think in some regard that had an impact on the decisions she made later in life. They weren't necessarily decisions that I would, have chosen for her. But once she became of a certain age, of course, these are your choices. And me personally, I've always been trying to be the fixer, and trying to give, if I look at your situation, I'm like, well, this is something that could help you. I've tried this and it works for me. You should do this, or, you should go here. You should stop doing that. I can't be God for you. I can't be that direction. I can lead my life, and hopefully, the goal is to lead our life in such a manner that they will want to emulate you, as they grow older. But, I've made my own mistakes. So it's about that unconditional love. And so for me, it truly was unconditional love. And unfortunately, sometimes it was at a price. You had a price to pay, depending on how you go into that. So for me, it was different, once again, for how it's going to look for somebody else, because I was all about protecting my children and, making sure they have everything they need. If something was broken, let me help you fix it. And, and I see that same trend in past friendships, job issues, all of those things. It's transparent throughout that. And so my mom is my hero. My mom, she's absolutely hero. And even from, when we were kids, watching her work full time, watching her go to school full time and carry the load of a household, and me and my brother and on. And so I and she did everything with such grace and class and faith, and, just to see that and in some way emulate that in my own life. When we discovered that my mom was going through dementia, and I guess it's maybe about 5 years or so now that we've kind of been dealing with that. My parents, who now live in Ohio, when they retired, they moved down here to South Carolina. And that was the best decision at that time. And they lived in Aiken, and we still were here in Columbia. When she was diagnosed with dementia, we had to make some decisions now at this point. it was going to be totally different, and we had to look at the bigger picture. So at that time, we decided to move them back home closer to family, and that worked out. It worked out for good. And so over the last couple of years, we've had to make some transitions with them as far as living arrangements and getting them to a place that's something more manageable. But watching, it's hard to even say watching mom decline over the years. It's hard for me to say that. It's more, I guess, about seeing her evolve in different roles, at a different place, because she is very self-sufficient still. She's very strong-willed, and we're grateful. But she is 85, and she's had a lot of heartache and as well on her own. My mom will be quick to tell you in the middle of her dementia that she is number one. Oh, she will not let you forget. Number one, she is the oldest child. And so even as she grew up, she was responsible for helping her mom raise 10 children. And so, hearing those stories of how, she had to take care of not only the children, but her mother when she was ill. And, just as I've gotten older and I hear the stories from my aunts and my family members, and, realizing that I did not know that my grandmother, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was like 59 years old when she passed, 57 or 59. And I was like, I didn't realize she was that young. And then so here to see us. But nevertheless, so mom is now just in a different season of her life, and dealing with that, and in a place where you have to make decisions for your elderly parents, decisions for your family members, decisions for, children in crisis, decisions for, grandkids of divorced parents, and all of these things, and trying to find priority and time for yourself. How do you do that? How is the safety and security of your grandkids more important than that of your daughter? How is the care and concern for your beloved mom more important than the relationship with your husband? We can juggle the dice any kind of way. What that means for me, particularly over this last year, is finding acceptance of that. I ain't got it. I can't do it. I'm trying to fix my own life. I don't want to be out of here at 60 and still have, my plate full of what God has for me to do. I don't want to do that. And, all I can do is all I can do. I do the best that I can. And it doesn't make any one lesson or one responsibility any more important than the other, because you can't classify that. And I don't believe God has called for us to do that. But he has given us faith, strength, courage, all of those things that we need when dealing with those things. And I discovered, and I told myself even last year when I turned 60, that this is my time. I pray God gives me 40 more years, but I don't know. And I know that I still have work to do. And if I don't put myself first, if I don't begin to take the measures needed to build who I am and to bring the gifts that God has in me out, then what good have I done? I've gone with my gifts still inside, and he didn't give us those gifts to keep. And I was thinking just earlier this week, when you receive, that Christmas gift, or that, wedding present, or whatever the gift might be, something very dear and enduring, what do we want to do? What if my hubby gave me, a 3-carat rock? Yeah, you can do that if you want to. But what if you got that? I wouldn't want to wear gloves forever. I don't care how cold it was. Who wants to take that and cover that up? that's a gift. And when people see that gift, that's beautiful. Oh, your husband must love you. You could, well, people will go on and celebrate. They'll celebrate that gift with you, and it makes you proud. But what if I'm not showing that gift? And so that I found that that's what I was doing by not being myself, by not being authentic, by not putting myself first. I was hiding the gift that God had given me, and that's not pleasing to Him. That's not pleasing to Him, because then I'm not going to be of any benefit to anyone else. And I think that when we go through life, when we go through these different seasons and challenges in our life, they are meant to share. We go through stuff so we can give out stuff. We go through stuff so other people can learn stuff. And that's I believe what I've done. The different phases of my life, they've not been easy, but God has gotten me through. He has strengthened me, and I want to be able to give back the lessons, to share the lessons that I've learned through all of those. How did I find my way in that? I think that defining moment is still being defined. I really do. I don't recall just like, boom, that's it. I guess if anything, it was when I, turned 60 last year. And just, you kind of have a rude awakening. Whoosh! Just yesterday, I was 50. What happened? I remember celebrating 50. And here I am. It's just the realization that life goes by so quickly. Just yesterday, my youngest was a baby, and now we got college graduates, and it's like, wow. And so I realized that life was moving at a rapid speed, and I think the older you get, it moves even faster. And I didn't want to miss anything. I didn't want to miss receiving what I'm still yet to receive. I don't want to miss giving out what's in me. And I am ready to live my best life. I want to experience, the things on my vision board and to fulfill all of those things. But I think it's a process. If I could talk to younger Lindy, that's what my family calls me, Lindy, I would tell her, don't be so scared. Don't be scared. Don't be scared. Take the risk. Take the risk soon. Take the risk often. Because on the other side of that, it's the same on either side. It's just whether you're going to do it or not. And I would tell her not to be afraid. My life has turned out good with all the ups and downs. Thinking back, I don't know if I really just had a picture of what life was supposed to look like for us. And I think, I did know that it was going to revolve and evolve around family. So I always knew that I wanted a big family and children around, because that's where I grew up in. That's what I'm a part of. That's my village. And so I knew that much. And I guess, I kind of wanted that American dream: find a husband, fall in love, buy the house, have the 2 dogs, whatever. And I've had that. I've had that. But it wasn't without bumps in the road. It wasn't without detours. It wasn't without breakdowns and all of that. And so I think just knowing what to expect out of life, you get what life gives you. You get what life gives you. The most important lesson that I have learned in life is to don't be afraid to give of yourself. I have found in life that sharing and being there with people, not just for people, being able to be myself around individuals and watching that unfold in certain environments has just been very rewarding to me. I like the way that I make people feel when I'm around them. I like that. And I know that is the gift in me. And so I think that's one of the most rewarding things. I'm sure I do, but I don't really know of a whole lot of enemies that I got. Everybody don't like everybody, but but just to know that in some small way, that I made a difference in somebody's life, whether it was with a kind word or, a card or what have you. And I try to share that with my children and my grandkids especially. We had a moment last week with one of my grandkids, and, they were not doing their part for Yaya to do her part. And I got fed up and I'm like, enough. And so I was a little loud and all of that. And my granddaughter, she was very distressed, that evening. And she was sad. I'm like, what's wrong with you? You were yelling. And I'm like, well, adults yell sometimes when they're upset. And then she said, but I don't understand, and so having to explain that people in life have to make sacrifices. And so when we make sacrifices for you and you don't do your part, it just makes it very difficult. And so, but if we work together and, you do your part, I do my part, it can be wonderful. And, before the end of it, it was, we had a kumbaya moment. But I think, it's a lesson for life. If we all just give a little bit, let's do what we've been called to do. Let's play the part. Let's play to share the gifts that God has given us in those moments. Then, it will just bring unity. It'll bring that connecting with one another. And I feel like it'll lead for a much happier life. Just the things we see on TV and all of that, it's all a result of broken relationships. Every bit of it. Somewhere it's about a broken relationship. So if we focus on healing the relationships at the beginning, what would that look like for us in, next 5-10 years, or just in the community that we're a part of? How would I like to be remembered? I think I shared just a little of that. I want to be remembered for how I made people feel when I was around them. That it doesn't hurt to be kind to one another. It doesn't hurt to be nice. It can make all the difference in the world. A kind smile or a kind word. If I listen to what my heart has been trying to tell me, I'd be much further along in life than I am now. I should have listened a long time ago. But it's never too late to hear. It's never too late to hear. And I'm hearing her say, this is my moment. This is my time. And, not to waste what God has given you. Don't be afraid to share and to be who you are in the places and spaces that God puts you. And it's not too late. It's not too late. And, for anybody that's in that place of, when's my turn coming? Do it now. Do it now. And, take baby steps in that direction and find your place in this world. What I know for sure is that I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me.